Hi guys, welcome to Lit Term number 3. We're going to be covering a lot of different things under the big umbrella term diction, which breaks down into two different definitions, but we're really going to focus on one for this class. So the first definition is talking about the clearness of a person's speech. And if you've ever been involved in drama, you've heard Mr. Shetro use this word to talk about how a person is enunciating. Because to tell somebody that they need better diction means that you want them to pronounce the words more clearly. The second definition, and the one we focus on in this class much more so, is the way in which words are used in speech or writing. And another term we use for diction in this case would be word choice. Basically, anytime you're writing or giving a speech, you're going to choose words very specific to your audience and purpose. And so one of the things that we would tell you to do is to watch your diction when doing those types of things. So that's the big umbrella, and then we're going to break this down into some smaller parts. Sensory details are a major part of writing, and these are words incorporating one of the 5 senses. A lot of times you'll hear us say in writing classes that we want you to show, don't tell. And that's because when you're writing a story or any kind of narrative essay, we want to feel like we're in the story instead of just hearing about it. It's more interesting that way. Even people who tell jokes tend to show, don't tell, if they're a good joke teller. Some of the examples of this actually fall under another umbrella term, figurative language. And I'm going to break figurative language down a lot more in another lit term video. So just for now, know that figurative language is any type of language you're not supposed to be taking literally. Some metaphors, similes, hyperbole are typically ones you've learned at this point, and we're going to be adding to that list as we go throughout the semester. Another part of diction then is dialogue, and dialogue is a conversation between 2 or more characters. And one of the things we'll be talking about when we talk about suffixes and prefixes is die, which means 2, and log, which is a form of speech. So if that helps you remember it, you have 2 people speaking here at least. Sometimes people will use dialogue as a verb, especially like in the business world. You might have somebody come out and say to you like, hey, will you step into my office? We need to have a dialogue about our expectations on this project. So that might be used that way as well. In reading and writing, you're going to see dialogue denoted through question or quotation marks. What the character's saying should have quotation marks around it. And you're going to know that a new speaker is speaking when it's a new paragraph. So if you are writing dialogue, you should have a new paragraph every time somebody switches the speaker. So one person speaks, it's a paragraph. Second person speaks, it's a new paragraph. Some people write that all in one big block, but it's really hard for a reader to keep track of who's speaking when you do it that way. So that's one of the writing rules, is that you get a new paragraph for each speaker. Another form of diction is dialect. And a dialect is language specific to a region, an age, or social class. This is the kind of stuff that people debate in Indiana about whether you say pop or soda pop, because which one you choose depends on where you grew up. So that's specific to a region. It could also be whether you call videotaping or recording, because taping was something people my age did because we actually had a VCR with a tape, or we made mixtapes. It's an art form. And for you guys, you don't have tapes anymore, so you just say record. So dialect is a way to show a person's accent, if you will. Okay, so here's an example of dialect in a very popular book. And if you look at this and read it, you can see words that would indicate that we have somebody who probably has a French accent, which is the one accent I cannot do. I always sound like an Irish crossover pirate. But if you have trouble when you're reading accents or dialects in literature, it's always kind of fun to read it out loud if you're struggling. So in this case, this one's pretty simple. This is from Fleur Delacour in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Feel free to pause it and do your best French accent. So our next example comes from the book The Hobbit, which is one of my favorite books, and in it, in one chapter, we have one of my favorite characters in all of literature and movies, Gollum. And so here's my best Gollum impression for you to enjoy or make fun of me for. We wants it, we needs it, must have the precious. They stole it from us, sneaky little hobbitses. Wicked, trickety, false. And there's two things going on here that tell us about Gollum in terms of dialect. First of all, we have word endings, adding the S's on the ends of things tell us that something's not quite right. He's not proper English. Also, we have little sentence fragments, okay? These things also tell us that he's maybe not the smartest dude, or hobbit, or ex-hobbit, or demon. We don't really know in this book. And here, the little sentence parts here also indicate that he can't quite put together complete thoughts. He just kind of shouts things. So that's all stuff that's telling us about him, especially compared to the other characters in the book who speak in these big flowery speeches. And our third and final example here for dialect is from my favorite author, and the only American author I included in these examples. He's one of my favorites because he writes American characters so realistically and always kind of about the American dream and whether it's attainable or not, and I kind of like that stuff. So if you're into that, I highly suggest John Steinbeck. Most of his characters come from the same area, and except in The Grapes of Wrath, they end up in this spot where he likes to write, kind of like how Stephen King always tends to set his stories in Castle Rock. So here you have a clear southern accent with, you're bound to get ideas if you go thinking about stuff. Alright, we have ideas and thinking. Thinking is a Midwest type thing. People in Indiana tend to leave G's off of words, and you'll find that in most of the Midwest. And then ideas tells us that we're a little bit more south than where we live right now. So that's the kind of stuff we're talking about when we're talking about dialect. So that's it for this video. We'll continue to break down diction in some following videos because there's so much under this umbrella and so many things we can be talking about. So we'll just stick to these things for right now and see how we do with them. Have a good week.